Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 8, A Measure of What Wisdom Means to Me, from Some Mystical Adventures by G.R.S. Mead. Chapter 8, A Measure of What Wisdom Means to Me. Any attempt by an individual to appreciate justly the general worth of wisdom or enlightenment or spiritual gnosis must, in the nature of things, be doomed to failure, for such a general judgment of real value would require a knowledge not only of what wisdom means in the general scheme of things, but also of what it has wrought in the nature of every individual who has come under its influence. No adequate evaluation of the true worth of spiritual gnosis can be set forth even by the best endowed individual, for whatever he may say is but his own single praise-giving, an appraisement that can diminish no whit from the praise-giving of others, or in any way appropriate their songs of thankfulness. These have all to be blended together to form the grand total. They must all sing together to complete the great symphony of joy, the heartfelt thanks of all awakened souls from the infinite variety of the divine wisdom. Whoever seeks to determine the value of this ideal can do so for himself alone, appraising it by his own standard, according to his own idea of what it is, and according to his knowledge of what it has wrought in himself. If a man does not value spiritual gnosis for himself, he cannot value it for others. If, in the ignorant conceit of prideful patronage, he allows it may be helpful to A or Z, but declares it is no good for him, he is not talking about gnosis, but about some false notion of it. For true gnosis is precisely that which is the most valuable of all things for all, seeing that it is the wisdom that unveils the mystery of seeming good and seeming evil, to the utter satisfaction of body, soul, and spirit with the state of things as they are. I shall therefore in this adventure attempt no more than to try to disclose a momentary glimpse of some small measure of what the value of spiritual gnosis means to me. I have already let the atmosphere of feeling in which my thought is bathed in contemplating this ideal be seen above. The evaluation of spiritual gnosis for me is thus pure praise-giving to wisdom. I have nothing but praise for it. My difficulty is that I cannot praise it enough. I have no evil to say of it, for it is the energizing of the good. No criticism to make, for it transcends my judgment. No depreciation to offer, for it is beyond all praise. I am unreservedly enthusiastic on the subject. Perhaps you may in your wisdom think I am foolish to be so enthusiastic about anything. But my ideal of wisdom is absolute, must inevitably be so, for it is that which will make me wise and free, truly wise and truly free. Not wise and free as you or I may understand these words in our present ignorance and slavery, but really wise in ignorance as well as in knowledge, and free in bondage as well as in liberation. For you really do not suppose I am so feeble as to allow anyone else to define wisdom for me, and impose his notion of things on my universe, play hell with my heaven, and make me weakly suffer the passion of an intellectual and spiritual martyrdom, when my wisdom teaches me, as one of its first lessons, to be prepared at any moment to shift my standpoint and be ever readjustable. No, even a babe in this spiritual gnosis is big enough to have a universe of his own without any outside interference, for a universe in reality has no outside. His infant thought control can wipe out systems in the wink of an eye, the instant they are perceived to be awry from the truth. His baby laughter creates new ones every moment he sings in greater harmony. Oh, but you will say, you are not playing fairly with us. Gnosis, or whatever else you may call it, we know is this, that, and the other. We have read all about it in books by Mr. B and Mrs. A. It is quite true that it is this, that, and the other, and something else. But it is not true that you have read all about it in books by Mr. B or Mrs. A, or that you can read all about it in all the books of all the messieurs and mesdames A to Z in the literary or illiterate world. At any rate, it is not my ideal you have read about if you think you can snuff out my enthusiasm by your criticism of this book or of that, or even of this Bible or of that. If you have read of my ideal, you have read of something that must inevitably take you out of yourself because of its grandeur and greatness. If you have ever come across it self-consciously, I do not mean if you have simply read sentences and chapters with your eyes and unreflecting brain, you too would sing its praises. You could not help so doing. It is the natural result and the proof that you have understood. Whatever takes a man out of his little self and refunds him into his greater self, even for a moment, is the energizing of spiritual gnosis in him. This divine impulse may be conveyed by the understanding of written or the comprehension of spoke words, or without the mediation of words at all as we understand them, by means of those winged intelligences who are voiceless for physical ears but who speak the universal language of the soul. And what are the value and meaning of this mystery? How can one appraise such wealth of meaning, such inestimable worth, when the Spirit of God, the divine breath, begins to inbreathe itself self-consciously in the essence of man's being? How shall we estimate this good in any terms of human valuation when every such term is already exhausted in appraising the simple gift of life, even in its mode of life in death and death in life, which men cling to as the most precious of all their possessions? Let us bethink ourselves of the ceaseless song that nature sings in praise of life even in its known phases from plant to man, of the joy of life when it courses through the physical veins. And then let us think of this life no longer as unknowing and subconscious, but as impregnated with the light of true intelligence, and so bringing to birth within the essence of man a marvel, a being of a new nature, a man-god of superhuman power and faculty, who of his very nature sings a song infinitely more wise than any man can sing, in realization of the worth and meaning of the actual, not in praise of some selected good alone, according to man's limited view of what is good and what is evil, but in praise of things as they really are, a natural song that must be sung, once even the possibility of this meaning begins to be realized, and the secrets of the divine purpose begin to reveal their hidden presence in all things, good and bad, for the dualities of bad and good that we call men. You say perhaps this is not possible. I would venture to reply it is inevitable. It is man's glorious destiny, foreordained of wisdom. We are not the cruel sport of a heartless tyranny, the victims of a callous cosmic inquisition, the senseless torturer of human souls, but nurslings of the gods and children of the Father of the worlds. How then can we sufficiently admire and praise such marvelous forethought for our good and wise provision for our welfare? And the divine purpose, forethought and provision is wisdom. You perhaps reply again, this is not of science but of faith, the baseless fabric woven by fond dreams of soaring fancy and far removed from any actuality of fact and of experience. I would rejoin, I am not ashamed of a faith that puts all so-called science to the blush. Faith alone can remove the mountains of our present prejudices that encircle the horizon of our ignorance. Spiritual faith is the precursor of gnosis. This faith is that which makes us act rightly, and it is by right action alone that this supernal knowledge comes. It comes not by thinking, nor by dreaming, not by fancy, nor even by meditation. Realization comes by action. Actuality is hid in action and is revealed by action. Faith is compelling will, not belief in this or that creed, but the determination of man's being to terminate the illusions of his present crucifixion on the cross of the opposites, and so arise to a knowledge of the reality of the great passion which feels with all that lives and breathes, and to the intuition of the great drama in which one actor acts through all the bodies in the universe. Will is beyond all pairs of opposites. Within the pairs, all is desire. Such faith in the overmastering truth of man's potential divinity is not born of ignorance, but is already of knowledge. Ignorance cannot breed faith, it spawns belief. Faith is of the will, not of the desire. It is that which makes us act without attachment. And action is the language of our God, the speech that gods can understand in all its meaning, while we men can comprehend only so much of it, as perchance dogs of human language. My ideal has thus changed for me the values of many words. Once I cared little for faith, much for knowledge, now I esteem it less. But the faith I cared little for was not faith, it was a false notion of what faith meant. The topsy-turvy notion that that summation of a series of beliefs would result in conviction. But faith is of another order. It is of the will and being, not of the intellect and desire. It is immediate and not dependent on time. So with knowledge as humanly conceived is deduced and not immediate. It is an intellectual process and not the expression of wisdom in action, which is living gnosis. Wisdom once meant many things for me. Indeed, it eventually came to mean so many that my reason saw no possible prospect of ever containing them. Their variety was so great that I became lost in the endless diversity of detail. Now, wisdom means one thing only, but this one thing is not one of the many things. It is of another order. It is a will not to know but to be. It is the assurance that gnosis is realization. This faith is the death of conventional knowledge and the birth of wisdom. The more you absorb this wisdom or spiritual gnosis, the more it absorbs you. You cannot get tired of it. That is impossible, for it is perpetual refreshment of the nature of ever making new again. It is the secret of the perpetual youth of the gods, the panacea of all ills, the divine elixir, the secret of the philosopher's stone. How then shall those who have come within its benign influence, who are conscious of its holy presence, appraise so great a mystery? They cannot adequately value it, for even its possibilities are inestimable realities, while in itself it is the pleroma of satisfaction, complete fulfillment. But if we would estimate it by considering what we were before we came to consciousness of its existence and what we are now in this faith in its being, then we can calculate an infinitesimal fraction of its worth in the terms of our present procession in fate. For myself, it is now difficult to realize the utter vacuity and meaninglessness of my life before I came to know of this quest. I ask myself again and again, is that dim memory of purposeless wandering and drifting on from day to day, which I conjure up as the picture of my youthful past before I hear of it, really myself? It is now less real to me than many a dream. It was indeed dream, not waking consciousness. At first, when I opened my eyes, I was like a child without discrimination. I was hungry. There was food piled high on many tables. I wanted to taste all of it. I was a glutton or an epicure, which you will. I set to work to taste it mentally. I read ravenously, devoured anything I could lay hands on. What an indigestion it was. Lives of mystics and saints and adepts, Indian philosophy and Buddhism, religions and mythologies of all kinds, magic and the occult arts, Kabbalism and mysticism and Gnosticism, the mysteries and secret societies, spiritism and mesmerism and hypnotism, biblical criticism and heresies of all kinds. I was young and inexperienced and was starving. There were no introductions, no charts of the unseen world, no catalogues raison to the best books to be studied. You were turned loose in the midst of it and ate yourself out like a grub. But even so, think of what it meant. True, it was all as yet a chaos for me. But what a chaos. It was in some sort living substance to feed on a chaos only insofar as I had not as yet the power of proper selection and discrimination in the too great profusion of the banquet. But even so, it was a foretaste of the good things of home, which made the exiled prodigal realize once for all the utter emptiness of the dead husks of the conventional that for so long had been his daily meal. It was the beginning of an absolutely new life, in which at first one was naturally enough a babe, but it was life, not death, waking, not dreaming. Gradually the powers and discrimination began to dawn. Taste, the innate taste of the soul, developed from sampling the many dishes set before me, and I gradually began to select the purest forms of food, the greatest sayings and inner teachings of the gnoses and theosophies of the great world faiths. What was at first, in my case, an intellectual delight began gradually to take hold of my emotional nature. Of this side of the subject, it is not becoming to speak in terms of personal experience. At least it has never seemed to me to be so. To wear one's heart on one's sleeve appears to me to be rather a sign of superficial emotion than a revelation of the depths of true passion. There is a natural hesitation in displaying to the gaze of the crowd the secrets of the shrine of the heart, whereas the opinions of the head are generally all the better for the rough criticism of the world, for they have to be either broken in pieces or hammered into proper shape by strife and struggle with other opinions. But the tender thoughts of the heart, the loving hopes of the faithful spouse of the spirit, are not for any ears but those of spiritual relatives and friends. And yet is precisely in these same tendernesses and loves of the heart that the power of spiritual life is most potently manifested to self-consciousness. This power transfigures the whole nature. The formal mind follows after it, anxious to shape itself into the image of its love. For it is the power of the father in the mother that brings the son to birth. It is the power of love within the formal mind that organizes it from within. Like to the cosmos of great mind, while the conflict of contrary opinions from without provides the right resistance for the molding. Indeed, it is not seemly to display the secret workings of the mystery within, not seemly because no description can do anything but dim the beauty of the reality of the divine in working. For that in working is the energizing of beauty itself, which transforms the unadorned and unordered nature into a copy of itself, the harmonious order and cosmic loveliness of God's own Son. This living realization of the meaning of wisdom is not derived from books. From books we may intellectually grasp the theory, but for understanding theory must first be put to practice and rightly acted out. The theory impresses upon us the idea, we then imagine or image forth that idea in our minds, and so imagining by sympathetic magic we feel the power, and feeling it we act it out. And by acting it out we then and then alone begin to know in terms of truly Gnostic knowledge. But how is it possible to convey emotionally to others what such an apparently bald statement as this may mean to one who has experienced even a moment's duration of such ecstatic? How can anyone express on the surface of things the depths of meaning that such Gnostic passion or spiritual actuality contains? Far as I am from any pretension to the full achievement of such exalted ecstasy, I can nevertheless sense so much of it as to make me utterly convinced that if I could convey to another in a single flash a knowledge of all the books and articles I have written and of all the lectures I have delivered on this subject, it would not exhaust even the surface meaning of what it is to me. I know I have not as yet even begun adequately to express what it really means for me. I am as yet inarticulate in the true language of wisdom. I can as yet only send forth cries and utter interjections. The more I realize its grandeur and its power, its inestimable worth and its inevitable satisfaction, the more I am persuaded how utterly it is beyond any human power of adequate expression. And this must naturally be so, for the whole universe has been created for its expression, and for this purpose solely. How then can any small mortal with his human baby talk say what is may be? Those of my readers who have flattered me by reading so far, and who flatter themselves that they have matter-of-fact minds, will perhaps here interpose. All this is rhapsody and rhetoric. If you possessed any clear notion of the matter, you could express it. But is it really rhapsody and rhetoric, or rather is it not the calculated statement of the fundamental fact on which my existence rests? It seems to me to be purely scientific in the best sense of that much misused term. The whole universe expresses wisdom, sings the praise of wisdom. It is revealed equally well in the foolishness of men as in the wisdom of nature to the sight of God and to those blessed ones who have pure vision. In wisdom God created the heavens and the earth, and all that are therein. The mother of all things is wisdom, actually so and not metaphorically. Wisdom is the spouse and complement of God as creator, that in which the deity fulfills himself. It is living ideas alone that grow and have the power of reproduction. And it is to the treasure house of such living ideas, the priceless seeds of the divine sower, that the holy quest for gnosis and self-realization conducts us. The mechanical handing on of what others have written or spoken without the power of transmitting the living spirit of the thinker or the seer is trafficking in barren or dead ideas. This is not truly human gnosis, for there is no conscious wisdom in it. It is the work of elemental transmission solely, an excellent thing in itself, exceedingly useful, but not the work of self-found men. Spiritual gnosis must have life as well as light. The one without the other is either chaotic or barren. All the teachings, all the instructions of spiritual gnosis on countless problems can be summed up in one living idea, the most potent seed of all, in the great granary for planting in the fitly prepared mind of man. And this master idea is that man is potentially divine. This seed of gnosis, this power of growth or perfectioning in the wisdom of God, is the true man himself, realizing himself in the soul of his purified nature, which means a nature capable of sensing all opposites in a balanced state that transcends them, and thus supplies the ground of spiritual knowledge, or gnosis of the clarified or justified mind. And here I break off, having perhaps said little I have not said before, and having fallen far short of what I desired to write, and yet with the conviction that if I tried again and wrote it otherwise, I should still feel the same about it, even if I succeeded in giving my sentences fairer form and my ideas clearer expression. For wisdom, then, I repeat, I have nothing but praise. Spiritual gnosis must be lived to be known. For living it, one lives wisely, and living wisely, one reaches true happiness, and reaching true happiness, one signs songs of thankfulness to Him who by His wisdom has made all things. I do not, however, for one instant suggest that it is because of the passing through these high stages that I praise wisdom. I praise wisdom because I cannot help it, even from the bare imagination of what it means. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.